What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. We are very, very excited because with the hot new release of one battle after another coming out, the streams are not stopping, the videos are not stopping. We did our non-spoiler review, we did our spoiler review, but now we're going to talk about it a little bit more. We don't have to be in depth on once we get to it, but we are doing a PTA ranking. I felt like this is just absolutely perfect because I didn't do it when Licorice Pizza came out because I was like, it's 9 films. It's uneven. I don't want to do that. And now he's coming out with one battle after another, his passion project. And now we have a top 10 list of the 10 best Paul Thomas Anderson movies. This was a nightmare trying to make. This was so hard. But I'm here joined by my co-host, Tristan. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's a great day to do some rankings too. Yeah, we talked about him as a filmmaker a little bit, and I went about another review, but it'll be fun to talk about his whole entire filmography. And this is like an impossible ranking. This is one of the first we've done on this channel together, if not the first I've done with you guys. So it's going to be a spicy one, I think. It's almost like impossible to rank these movies. So it'll be a fun conversation to see where you have certain stuff at and if we have any hot takes. You know, I look at my list and I feel like I have one or two hot takes, but it'll be interesting to see if you have similar takes, you know?
Yeah, I definitely have some hot takes that will make people stop watching this video, maybe, and other stuff like that too, whenever things happen. But that's just the fun of it, is that every single one of these films are great. Like going through his filmography again, Quentin Tarantino, you can see behind me, I love Quentin Tarantino. He's a great director. He used to be my number one favorite director of all time. And now I'm really thinking it's PTA, because seeing that he has these 10 in his filmography, any director would kill to have these 10 in their filmography. Like, this is just exceptional work. Like, his worst film is better than Tarantino's worst film, is better than Spielberg's worst film, is better than all that. So I'm excited to talk about it. Yeah, this is the first, I think this is maybe one of our first like non-annual rankings, because, you know, it's kind of an annual tradition to do the best of, worst of the year, you know, most anticipated, all that stuff. But this is one of the first like actual that we've done, and so I'm really excited to discuss this. So what we're going to basically do, guys, just run it down, both of us giving our 10s through our 1s, and we're each just going to like take turns talking about why we have it there and talk about the film itself, and like a brief like 2 minutes or so, something around there, and then go to the next film. But yeah, I'm really excited. So we'll kick it off with number 10. And I guess since you're nervous, I'll let the nerves get out of you. What's your number 10?
My number 10 is still a very, very good movie, but it's his first movie, Hard 8. I think this is a very strong debut film, but I think it has the flaw of a lot of debut films where he's very, very heavily showing his influences on his sleeve, almost to a fault. You know, he's obviously watched like a bunch of Scorsese movies like 50 times in a row, and then went and made his own Scorsese movie, you know, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, especially for your first film. It makes sense to kind of lean heavily on what you know works, right? And it's something that inspired you. And I think throughout his career, PTA has openly shown his inspirations on his sleeve. But this one, for me, it's still a very good movie. John C. Reilly is probably like his best performance of his entire career in this. He seems to be kind of pigeonholed to like being a comedic guy, and everyone thinks of him as like this crazy, kooky supporting guy who shows up for a few scenes and we laugh at him, and that's kind of it. But you watch this and you realize this is an actual dynamic actor who pulls off some really wide range of emotions, and I think he's just incredible in this. And as we talk about these movies, we're going to talk about how PTA has a knack to bringing out the best of a lot of his actors. Almost every time he makes a movie, he's doing like someone's best, like career best acting is in that movie, right? And I think John C. Reilly shows that from the very front, that like PTA has a knack for finding the great in these people. And yeah, I think this is a lot of fun. I was mostly blown away by his performance. So yeah, that's how I feel about Hard 8. It's his number 10 for me. It shows where he's going. There's a lot of stuff in here that you can see he latches onto, with like the outcast narrative, and like there's two guys who like are, you know, in totally different ways outcasts from the world, and them having this weird relationship that builds. And you can see that being something that he goes back to with these outcast characters, these found families, and you can see that throughout this movie. But I just don't think he necessarily pulls it off as well as he does in all of the rest of his films. This is still a very, very strong start and a strong debut, but I feel like if it wasn't PTA's movie, if he kind of was like making movies like this for his whole career, he wouldn't necessarily be super notable. But this is a very strong start, and it's misleading to have it at 10 because it is still a very good movie. And if you haven't seen it, because I know a lot of people have not seen this one, you should definitely check it out, especially if you're a fan of stuff like Boogie Nights that are very, very similar. A lot of his roots come from here. But yeah, 10. I'm wondering if you have the same film at your number 10. I don't know.
We actually do have the same number 10. So far we are very in line, but this is only the first one. But yeah, this is still a great movie overall. I still think it's really good. So it's not a knock to say that's why I was prefacing this earlier by saying the fact that a director has these 10, like this is insane because this is still a really good movie. It kind of gives Martin Scorsese vibes, but also gives a little bit of like the Quentin Tarantino dialogue vibes a little bit as well, like the way Quentin Tarantino writes and everything. You definitely could see that in here. And especially with Samuel L. Jackson, who he hasn't worked with since, but Samuel L. Jackson was really fun in this. But I was actually most fascinated by Philip Baker Hall when I watched this, because he is like a moral Jesus-like figure, basically, in a world full of like immoral people, and then they do a twist. I'm not going to give it away because this is the first time I watched it was this year to get ready for One Battle After Another. So I know some other people haven't seen, so I'm not going to give it away, but there's a twist with this character at the end. And I guess I didn't fully buy into the execution of it, but I thought like, oh, that's a really interesting idea for this twist for someone who's seemingly seemed perfect to be later imperfect and everything. So I thought like that was kind of really fascinating. Gwyneth Paltrow was really good in here. And yeah, I think John C. Reilly is great. I also wanted to mention, speaking of Philip, I wanted to talk about Philip Seymour Hoffman because this is the first of many collaborations that they did together. Okay. My internet went out for a split second there. I literally saw it go like, I was like, what is going on?
It's been attacked.
So yeah, I've been attacked. All right, so yeah, the Philip Seymour Hoffman, he just killed it in his one scene here, absolutely having a ball, and stole that entire scene. And he would go on later to steal every film that PTA did. But yeah,
he had a skill for it.
My only reason why this is 10 is you can definitely see that this is a director's first movie. It is very good, really good, but there's definitely those first-time director mistakes in there. But you could see where his style was and where he was going to go as a filmmaker later in his life. There was just some things in there that, they could have fixed up. When if he would have made this film later in his career, it probably would have been better than it was at the start of his career. But making it at the start of his career was fitting because this was good practice for him to be able to make everything else afterwards. So yeah, I'm in agreement. Hard 8, number 10 for me. Moving on to number 9. What do you got at number 9?
My number 9 is it was his most recent movie until recently. I was about to say most recent entry, but it is not his most recent entry. Licorice Pizza is my number 9. A visually striking movie, very gorgeous. The colors in this are incredible, like the cars and the convention halls, and it just really is just beautiful. And I think that's what really stands out from this movie over anything else is just it's shot so well. It feels so cozy. You get brought into this very complex and compelling main relationship that everyone talks about the age gap, but that is one part of this really interesting central relationship that I think is very compelling. It examines like the complexities of all these relationships and how you can't quite know who someone truly is, and if they're using you or trying to hustle you, or if they're really genuinely who they say they are. There's this element of like sexuality as a form of like capital. Like there's a scene where he goes into the waterbed store and the saleswoman is like kind of seducing him and giving him all these like weird eyes. And you want to think, why is this adult woman like seducing a teenager? But you also think like, is she really doing that, or is she just trying to sell a mattress, right? And there's this sense of like, when you're in a capitalist interaction, you can't quite tell if somebody's just trying to sell you something or if they're actually who they think they are. There's this thing of Alana's character. She gets told like, oh, this guy's always asking women for hand jobs. He's just a hustler. He's just kind of like a player. And she is wondering like, why isn't he like that with me? Is he someone that I cannot trust? And I think it's very interesting that these characters are so compelling and that this relationship is not so simple or so easy. You know, I think that is a really great part of this movie. Unfortunately, I think everything outside of that core relationship is just not very compelling. He has that thing where he has these actors come in to try and do like one scene Steelers, you know, Bradley Cooper shows up and it's kind of fun. But to me, they just like don't really stand out very much. And we'll talk about other movies where he does it, I think, a lot better. But even in Hard 8, you mentioned that he has, you know, a character will come in for like one really great scene and that's it. But a lot of the scenes in this that are supposed to be the one really great scene are just like strange, like the Chinese restaurant racism scene. I understand he's trying to show us another complex relationship where this woman can't speak her mind. She can't say what she feels to her husband because she depends on him for certain things, you know, and there's an exploitation in that relationship that's not fully explored. I think that's compelling, but I just don't think it's like fun to watch. And I don't think this main character is super compelling. I don't like his performance. I don't think Cooper Hoffman is very good in this movie, unfortunately, and I think he holds it back quite a lot. And whereas so many of these other films have a central character that is so incredible and so well performed and so well explored, I just did not get that from Cooper Hoffman here, and I think that unfortunately holds this film back. And it's not necessarily Cooper Hoffman's fault. He's very young in his career and he has a lot of like legacy hanging on him. I wonder what he'll be like in a few years, and if he can come back and work at PTA again, it might be something really great. But I just didn't really love this movie very much. I think it's very, very well made, but just not something I felt super compelled by outside of that main relationship that I think is very compelling.
And right now, you and I still are on the same track, because I am also going to say number 9 is Licorice Pizza, because while, yes, this gets some controversy, I want to explain that there's one bit of controversy I agree with. There's some more controversy I don't agree with. So the thing is that this was the time of like the early 70s, I believe it was, and it was a very confused type of time. The politics of that time was confusing. The beliefs of that time was confusing. The relationships of that time was confusing. And you even had Elvis dating Priscilla when she was 15 years old. So like stuff like that happened around this time. And Paul Thomas Anderson, he's not an idiot. He grew up around this time in the San Fernando Valley. Like he saw these relationships like this unfold where there really wasn't these strict rules of what kind of age you could date people, what kind of this and that could happen. People were just like, hey, feel the love, be free, all that kind of stuff, you know? And so this really accurately depicts the 70s, but also really accurately depicts that type of a relationship. And I think that was good. And I feel like their chemistry together, Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman, their chemistry was really great. While Cooper Hoffman was like fine in the movie, Alana Haim blew me away. For a singer going into actually performing, I thought she did a really phenomenal job doing the performance here. And I just thought that they worked really well together. I also really want to give a shout out to Bradley Cooper, who we saw getting, you know, nominated at the SAG Awards and all that. He was exceptional. He comes in and steals a few scenes. But I agree with you. There's people who come in there and it feels almost like another Anderson. I'm going to throw Wes Anderson's name out there. It feels almost like Wes Anderson, where when I watched The French Dispatch, for example, that was, hey, here's Wes Anderson's buddies. He's just going to pop. They're just going to pop in here for 5 minutes, and there's going to be no reason as to why they're here. It's like, oh, okay, they're just there, and it kind of feels like that with certain celebrity cameos and such. Like he has his wife in here, he has all these other people in here. He has to throw them all in there, and that is what really kind of takes me out of the movie a bit. And then also I do agree that the racism bit I'm not a fan of. But the reason I'm not a fan of it, I would have been okay because racism was very prevalent in the 70s. I would have been okay with a racist discussion or a racist character in there. But it's sort of PTA saying, isn't this funny? He's making fun of the Chinese woman. Isn't that funny, people? Laugh. It's like, that's what he's basically saying. And it's like,
and he does it more than once. Like, there's multiple racist characters in this where it's just straight up, isn't it funny that they're being racist? And I don't really think it's funny.
Yeah. It's like, I don't really think it's funny. I just feel like disgusted by this, So I just feel like he kind of got the point wrong here. But I will say, when it comes to thematically, I thought that this was a beautiful film about living in the moment and holding on to your youth, because Alana Haim's character is 25. She's going to be going up there, and she wants to just have fun, just live her life to the fullest. And then Cooper Hoffman is 15, but he, wants to become an adult, but he's afraid of aging too much. He's worried what he might become later. So he wants to experience his 15s but also with still the mindset of, I want to prepare for the future. So really kind of fascinating look on relationships, on time, on all this. So I really liked it quite a bit. It was actually my first PTA in theaters when I went to go see Licorice Pizza in the theater, but yeah, it's lower down on this list because of where the rest fall. So now on to number eight. But before we get to number 8, I'm going to take EDM's comment here, because that would be damn near impossible. He says to do a top 10 performances in PTA films.
That would be so hard. And it's like, you could do a top 10 performances in just Licorice Pizza. Like, there's so many great performances throughout his career. It would be tough.
Oh yeah, for sure. Number 8, what do you got?
Number 8, I'm curious how long we'll align here. My number 8 is a little bit more of a claimed one, so it's The Master. I really enjoy the craft of The Master. It's like this kaleidoscopic, almost like hypnotic flow through this guy's life. You'd almost start to lose track of time and lose track of place and lose track of reality. It feels like you're being brainwashed. You're being, gaslit by this cult. It has that nice flow, almost like the waves of the ocean, right? It kind of ebbs and flows through time, back and forth, and sometimes it really picks up and gets stormy, and you start to really lose track of where you're at, and then it kind of flows back down again. So I really like the experience of watching this movie, and it's especially carried, I think, by those lead performances. They're just like genuinely 2 all-timer performances, just battling against each other, and I think it's really compelling. This relationship is so compelling. The fact that this character Freddie Quell is just coping with his loneliness and his social rejection. He has these really terrible vices of alcoholism and things like that, and he turns away from that, but he turns towards this maybe even more dangerous vice of this cult-like group and these cult-like beliefs, and he starts to be entranced by the fact that this guy is so almost obsessed with him, right? This Lancaster dad, everybody who's around him is almost exalting him, and this guy who's been rejected for his whole life starts to get an ego to himself for a second. I really enjoy what they're doing here, but in the second half of this, I just start to really lose what it's going for. I start to not really keep track of what it's saying or what it's trying to do. I like this core 2 characters, but I don't necessarily feel that compelled by everybody else in the movie. So for me, it's part of the why this list is so hard, because this is already at a 9 out of 10 movie, but it's at 8 on this list for me, because I just start to really lose track of what it's going for, what it's trying to say. And I resonate with this message, right? And I really appreciate what it's talking about with Scientology and just cult-like beliefs in general, and the destructive power of those groups. And, these cults of personality are something that I feel like we're seeing play out in politics and in real life now, and the results of these big enigmatic figures that can be anything to anybody start to become way too powerful. So I think there's something about this where if I went and rewatched it now, maybe I would like it a lot more. But looking back on it now, there's a lot that I love about the feel of it and the flow of it and just the viewing experience of it, but I don't leave it super compelled by what it was saying beyond that.
Interesting. Well, we are finally differing here. So I'm going to transition on over to another Joaquin Phoenix movie, and I'm going to do Inherent Vice. Now, this is one that a lot of people hate, and like have at the very, very bottom of the list. But also, this is one that a lot of people have loved. If you see if you look at like the Letterboxd curve, it's wild. It's like people, when this came out, people hated it, but now like Letterboxd is like 5, 5, 5, 5, like all this stuff. It's like people were like freaking adore it now. And this is, and I'll just say this, I haven't gotten to the Master yet, but this and the Master, I think, are the two PTA films that warrant the best from rewatches. Because when I was rewatching them again, I got even more out of them. And this is like, again, this is number 8, but this is like my first 9 out of 10 movie on this list here. I really adore this film. I used to not like it, which was interesting. When I first watched it, I was in the same camp. I had like maybe a 3 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5. I was like, what the fuck is this? And this makes no sense. Like, what is it, and all this stuff. And then once I started exploring it more and watching it again and again and again, there's something about it. This is a very vibey movie, and a movie that is he is the king of the hangout films. He's done like Boogie Nights, he's done this, he's done Licorice Pizza. He's the king of the hangout films, and this is basically that, but because it's so like messy, that's part of its charm. Is it's messy and it is like chaotic, but that's what makes it so fun. And it's just, you love to spend time with these characters, and it's a movie that you want to feel rather than a movie that makes sense. If that makes sense, rather than a movie you understand. Mm-hmm. It's just so great. And Joaquin Phoenix, as always, he is amazing. But the cinematography and like the score and the soundtrack all really add other layers to this film, and the whole ensemble here is excellent. You have Owen Wilson as like this kind of political figure now, because of him taking a stand at like the Nixon rally, and then you have like you have Josh Brolin as like the cop who's like trying to investigate this whole crime, and he's like the detective. You have Martin Short as this like coked out lawyer. You have like all these different roles here that are just so fun and so sporadic. So I just think that this movie, it's insane, but it's got that like timeless classic feel to it. I don't know how to describe it, but that's just kind of how I feel. So, and I know we'll be talking about that one again here soon, but now moving on to number 7.
My number 7 is one of the most iconic films maybe ever, Boogie Nights. This is essentially the perfected version of Hard 8. It's this wonderful found family story filled with like these wild performances from these all kinds of characters. And we mentioned like he loves these outcasts, these social rejects who finally find a meaning and find something that they can, connect over. And I think it's great that they connect over something that is so outcasted as the porn industry. But I love this movie. I love this cast of characters. John Cheadle shows up and it's just incredible. And like, it's such a banger soundtrack too. The soundtrack of PTA is so important to his films. This is, I think, one of his most stacked soundtracks. We'll talk about a few more of his stacked soundtracks later on. And there's so many iconic moments throughout this film. Like that opening shot is just so incredible. The crowd claps the second this thing starts when they play it in a theater, and that really long party sequence that never ends. And you're like, my God, is this, it's like almost starting to be tortured. And Alfred Molina with like the fireworks going off, and you're just like, this is just totally absurd. I really enjoy the ride of this movie. You feel like it's called the ultimate hangout movie, but to me, it's almost like the ultimate like road trip movie or something. It's like the worst night of all time kind of movie. And I really enjoy the ride of this thing. It's not as high on the rest as the rest of the, just because I didn't feel as compelled thematically by it, I guess, as I was for the rest of them. And I also feel like this movie might, for me, have been like a victim of its own success, in that I heard it hyped up so much throughout my life for so long, and I only watched it for the first time a few years ago. And I wonder if those preconceived expectations of greatness may have maybe like not see this as like a perfect 5 out of 5 that other people see it as. But I really just love the element of all of these outcasted characters being able to find their way to in life, and like these people that you would not like, you would not want to root for, that by the end you root for all of them. People who have done really terrible things, people who have, you know, made mistakes in their life, that by the end you still empathize with them, right? And I think PTA is such a master of characters that can make mistakes and can be flawed, but yet still are humans, and you still care about them anyway. So to me, this is that perfect version of that movie. Yeah. And I really, really love this thing. I can't wait to watch it again. It sounds bad that it's at number 7, but it's only because everything beyond this essentially is a 5 out of 5 for me, you know? So like,
oh, yeah.
I'm so excited to get to the rest of the list. Don't make this sound like a knock on Boogie Nights. I love Boogie Nights. This is such a blast of a movie. I just maybe wish I would have seen it before I saw a lot of these other films, and then really kind of got caught up in that movement of this movie, because it's one of those movies where when it plays at a theater, everybody tries to go out and see it, you know, and it feels like an event. And when I go and I watch it, I enjoy watching it, but I'm not quite caught up in the way that the rest of the crowd is, you know. So I feel like I'm maybe missing out on the Boogie here. But yeah, I'm wondering whether this will be on your list. I'm assuming it's a little bit higher, but you never know with this ranking.
Well, you did one of the all-timer films there of people who love Boogie Nights. Like, there are people who hail it as even their favorite PTA film. And this one, you know, I literally switched this last minute as we were filming, because this wasn't this low earlier. And then I was just now decided to switch it to this low. So this is like just now a recent change. Is another one that people have in high regards as like their favorite PTA. But as I was rewatching them, I was looking at like thematically, at like how films make me feel emotionally, all of that. And I actually have There Will Be Blood at 7.
Wow.
Now here is the thing, like the channel. Here's the thing. All right. This is a 5 out of 5 movie. This is still a masterpiece. This is still great. The thing is, it is a masterfully crafted work of art. Like, if you were to say what is the closest, all film is subjective, but if you were like, what's the closest thing to maybe objectively the greatest film ever made, I could put this in that argument because of just the score, the acting, the writing, the directing, the cinematography, the every single element of what makes a film is completely perfect here. My issue, the reason why I have it at number 7 is, as I was rewatching all these films, a lot of these I really emotionally relate to and connect to. This movie leaves me feeling cold. I don't feel anything for this character. I don't care about him. I wanted him. Like, if he would have died in the movie, I would not have cared. But then the rest of the other characters, I just like don't relate to them. I don't relate to the situations going on. I mean, sure, I had a drunk father who was a horrible human being, but he also like wouldn't beat me up and say you were an orphan in the basket or whatever. I'm like I don't like my dad. He's not a good person, but like he wouldn't do that shit. And so it's just, this is a very evil, wicked, almost to the point of like, is he? I mean, he's human, yeah, but it's like he's like also a monster. It's just like and then it ends with that character winning, and that just, I guess, stirred me the wrong way a little bit, especially because of what it was trying to say about abuse, and that basically the abuser comes out on top and wins. And it's just sort of like, I don't know. I think that the film, again, expertly well crafted. This might be also top 3 greatest cinematic performances of all time, being Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, he is so good, and Paul Dano is holding his own. When you can hold your own against Daniel Day fucking Lewis, like you're a damn good actor. And so he does a phenomenal job here. Everyone just absolutely nailed their part. But again, I just couldn't, as someone who's been bullied, I just couldn't root for the bully. And that's the only reason. And I get that maybe that's the point. You're supposed to feel this way, but seeing it again, I just couldn't vibe with that. And that's why it's that low for me. So yeah, that is number 7 for me. So number 6, we are moving on to now. We are almost in the top 5 there, but we already got some 2 kind of controversial hitters out of the way. So let's see what else happens.
Yeah, we've got some comments too. People are watching along live as we do this ranking. Yeah, as we enter a bit closer to the top 5, my number 6 here is Punch Drunk Love. I absolutely love this main character. He's so funny and so endearing, and you want to hate him, but you just can't because you just love him. And he's so just charming. And I don't know, you want to hate this guy, but he's just such a blast to spend time with. I would be friends with this guy, and I would probably regret doing it, but every day I would be hanging out with this guy and seeing what crazy adventure he was up to next. I love that he is such an intense, bizarre person who finds meaning in his life by being loved by someone and showing love to that person. And I think it's a really heartfelt, really endearing central romance here. And I love that it explores what love can do to someone's life and how love can totally brighten up someone's dreary reality. And I really just love that central arc. And I also love that it's a crime movie that's set in an abnormal place. It's set like, in somewhere you would not normally see like this underbelly of like a mob and stuff like that. And it's very interesting that it's almost like David Lynchian, where it's like beneath this seemingly perfect part of the country, there's just like this really, really dreary underbelly within it. But I just love that the heartfelt nature of this movie shines through all of that dreariness. And I just really, really adore that main performance from Sandler. And you talk about uncut gems and even Jay Kelly, there would be no uncut gem to Jay Kelly without Punch Drunk Love, showing Sandler can do this, right? And this was probably my first PTA movie, so it might be part of my bias, but I really, really adore this thing. I go back to it all the time, and I think it's overlooked, certainly, of his films. So I really had a great time with this one, and I'm curious to see where you put it on your list, because this is one, like I said, that people kind of overlook. It's not necessarily underrated, I guess, because people do like it, but it's not necessarily talked about as like one of his greatest works, and I think it should be, because it captures that romance so well, and I think it, like PTA always does, characters that you want to hate, that you would never, think you'd spend time with in real life, by the end of the film, you love these people.
Yeah, and I also had it as my very first ever PTA, so it's kind of interesting. That's the very first one I ever watched, so we're kind of both relate there. But I got another one that I have at number 6. Before I get to that, yeah, we have Tom Baker in the chat. Says, I never was into his movies, but they are excellent. And then Acres of Movies has already given us our number 1. Says Inherent Vice is number 1. So interesting. That's a good one. That's a good one for sure. Good one. My number 6 is the other Daniel Day-Lewis movie on here, which is Phantom Thread, also another relationship movie. There you go. And I have this one at number 6 because it's the one I wasn't able to get to when I was doing my rewatches. So I've only seen it twice. Like all the rest of these movies now, I can say that I've seen them like maybe 3 times, but I've only ever seen Phantom Thread twice. And Phantom Thread is a beautiful, but also twisted romance of one-sided love. And it really deals with one-sided love, and also deals with sort of, not like abuse in terms of like hitting, but like kind of like verbal abuse and other kind of things when it comes to relationships as well. And as someone who recently just experienced that, this really hit close to me and really hit personally. And this was also one that when I first watched it, I watched it for like at home for the Oscars, and I was like, what? I don't get that. Why at the end? Why is he poisoning him? What's going on here? Like stuff like that. I just didn't understand it. Then when I went to go see it in a theater when the Oscars were doing their kind of re-release stuff, I was like, oh shoot. Or no, I didn't. When I went to go see it again, I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible now. I understand it. I get it. I get the ending. I get what they're going for. I get why this had to happen this way. And it was beautiful. And oddly beautiful, I should say. Vicky Creeps is so good in this. She is holding her own against Daniel Day-Lewis. And again, that is a hard thing to do when you're holding your own against a goated actor like that. Daniel Day-Lewis, exquisite. He is excellent here. This movie, when I first watched it, I thought of it as like more of a drama. Then on my second watch, when I saw it, this movie is wickedly hilarious. The burns that he makes, the fires that he's throwing at people, the reactions he has to stuff, all of that is so good here. I think that the costuming, oh my God, there's a reason why it won Best Costume Design. This has some of the most beautiful costumes you're ever going to see on film. This also, the score from Johnny Greenwood, maybe the best score I've ever heard from Johnny Greenwood. And that's saying something because he's one of the best composers working today. But yeah, this was one that really did really well at the Academy Awards. Leslie Manville was nominated for very good reason. She was excellent in here. And yeah, I just was blown away by Phantom Thread on a second watch. And I'm sure on a third watch, it could maybe even creep up even higher for me. So that is number 6 for me. And then now we are on to number 5. All right.
Number 5 for me is Magnolia. To me, this is like the perfect soap opera. It has all of these melodramatic, interconnected, but not quite interconnected stories with these really, really intense themes of abuse that are like contradicted with these wild performances in certain parts. And this like, you mentioned in the previous movie, when you watch it for the first time, you thought it was very dramatic, and then you kind of connected the comedic parts. And I felt similarly about Magnolia. When I watched it as a teenager, I thought, man, this is just like stupid melodrama. I don't really care what's going on. Nothing connects. What's the point of all this? And then I watched it just today as an adult, and this thing worked so much better for me. Like, honestly, if I hadn't rewatched this could have been like towards the bottom of this ranking. But after watching it again as an adult with a lot more life experience to look back on, I think this movie worked a lot more for me. The sense of characters who are just completely drawn by their longing and their regret. And you look back at your life and you can't help but wonder, if I had done this differently, or if this thing hadn't happened, what would my life be like? You know, especially now in such trying times with so many big world events happening at the same time, you can't help but look back and be like, why did this happen? There has to be a reason for this to happen. And I think this is a really compelling drama. Tom Cruise, we talked about PTA bringing out the best of actors. I think this is Tom Cruise's best performance and his best character. I love this character. He's such a absurd but like broken man. You really kind of change how you feel about a lot of these characters, similar to Tom Cruise's character, where they seem like one thing at the start, but then once you start to see their life from a different perspective, you see them differently. These are characters that PTA never allows to just be one thing. They're almost frustratingly vague. The characters that you like will do something that is just completely morally repugnant, and then people that you don't like will do something really genuinely good. And he never allows these characters to be all good or all evil. He never even allows them to be fully defined, right? Like the fact that you don't know these characters' motivations wholly is part of, I think, the good thing in this movie, that like, you never know who a person is. You never know what they would have been or could have been. You never know why they're doing what they're doing. And a movie like this almost feels like it's building up to like a collage of all these storylines finally coming together and finally meeting, and then all of a sudden it's going to make sense. And then this movie doesn't deliver that, right? It doesn't really give you that catharsis of everything coming together and making sense. So I think it is a really bold movie in that way, that it doesn't give you that conclusion. It doesn't tell you how to feel about these characters. It just makes you spend time with them for 3 hours. And PTA has said he wished this movie was shorter. He said I would cut this and that out of this movie, but I watched it and I'm like, I would watch like another hour of this. Like if this was like his 4.5 hour magnum opus, I would probably think it was a lot better than this. Because my biggest problem with this movie, honestly, is that we don't spend a lot of time with some of the best characters in here. We don't really get to know them, and I understand that's part of the appeal. These characters are so undefined, but I would have liked to get to know them a little bit more than we did. You know, there's this character who's like a really endearing cop who is like a charming, goofy kind of guy, but he's just like straight up terrible at being a police officer, right? I really, really enjoy that character, and we got to see the dynamics of that character. I really would have liked to spend more time with some of the other parts of this cast, but for such a sprawling cast of so many actors and so many characters and so many interconnected plot points, he does a great job balancing all that, but I just don't think this thing holds together quite perfectly in the way that these rest of these movies do. But that's for me why it's at 5 and not quite higher, but still genuinely an incredible masterpiece of a movie that I can't wait to go back and watch again. Even though I just watched it today, I would go back and watch this thing again and probably get even more out of it.
Nice. Yeah, I won't say where it ranks on my list, but I'll say it. I also watched it as a teenager when I first watched it, and then this was absolutely just way better for me on a rewatch. But we'll definitely get to that in a second. So for me, my number 5 is one that was mentioned not too long ago, and that is The Master. The reason I have this one this high at number 5 above some of these other ones that we mentioned is because I really personally connected to this cult, to what was happening around this cult, because as someone who grew up very religious, and what this movie has to say about religion, about the kind of brainwashing idea of religion and all that, like it really affected me and made me question things at that time, and it was really fascinating of a watch here. I think that the performances from my 2 favorite actors of all time, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix, just are absolutely incredible. That interrogation scene will be one of the greatest scenes. I think it is one of the greatest scenes in movie history. It's so good. And this is the one that definitely benefits from multiple rewatches, because when I first watched it, I also was like, well, what the hell is this? And then when I watched it again, I loved it even more, and I saw it a third time and was blown away. And so it just keeps on growing for me, and this could even potentially become like his masterpiece, and no pun intended there, eventually as time grows and I keep on watching it again, because just visually this is jaw-dropping what he's able to pull off visually here and show us really in how it depicts through the characters, such as waves crashing over the ocean in the very first frame is a look inside Joaquin Phoenix's character, and how just every single day it just feels like a wave just crashing inside of him because of like the PTSD that he has to deal with, and there's other elements that are just very visually metaphorical that work really well. I think also like the other supporting cast is good, like Amy Adams and Rami Malek, but it's really those 2 that just absolutely just blow away everything. And I agree with what was said earlier in the comments, where I think it was Tom Baker said that this is the best performance of the 2010s, and I agree with that. Oh no, it was EDM. Sorry about that. It was EDM who says halfway through The Master had the thought, wonder if this is how it felt watching Brando in Streetcar Named Desire as I witnessed Phoenix deliver the performance of the 2010s. I agree with that. I think this is like the best performance of the 2010s. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is also just as good right beside him. I think that if Daniel Day-Lewis didn't play Abraham Lincoln, I would have given the Oscar to Joaquin Phoenix for this movie, because this is to me was even better than that performance. And this was maybe the best movie of that year, potentially. This was just an exceptional movie through and through. And with each watch, it just gets even better and better. And yeah, I absolutely adore The Master. So moving on to number 4.
My number 4 is the other romantic entry of PTA's filmography, Phantom Thread. This is a much kind of quieter movie for PTA, but it's also very steamy and very kind of intense and crazy by the end. You know, the where this relationship goes, you never would have a million years guessed from the beginning of the film, right? I love the escalation of this movie and how it goes to places you never would have thought. And that central performance from Daniel Day-Lewis, I think, in this is just incredible. Probably better than he is in There Will Be Blood, honestly, to me, because he's a lot more understated here. He's a lot more like a real person. And in There Will Be Blood, he's almost like this figment of a theme. You know, he's not even like a real person. In this, he feels like an actual man who's complex and compelling. And you talk about him as an abuser, but you get to know this guy and who he is. And by the end of this, you almost like feel for him, right? And you understand what he needs in a relationship. And you have this strange twist that Alma is like willing and able to give that to him. And you get this strange dynamic of that relationship by the end that I think is just really compelling. And the way this could have gone so many other ways, that could have like broken up and this could have been a huge falling out. But the way this thing ends is just jaw dropping. And I'll never forget watching it for the first time and not seeing that coming, and then being able to watch it a couple more times and like wait for the crowd to react, like in that scene where they start to recognize the actual dynamic of their relationship. It's a very fun crowd watch. You would never expect that from a romance. It would be like, oh, you got to see this in the crowd though, because there's some crazy stuff. And you actually should. I really love this attention to detail and how just like slow building this thing is. You're profiling a character who's a designer, so I think it makes sense that this is so meticulous and quiet, and there's such an attention to detail in every single frame, and every single note of that score is so tight and so methodically put together. This is such an incredible accomplishment of a movie, and we talked about how a lot of the other films can be kind of chaotic and all over the place, and this movie I think is easily his most tight and most focused movie. So for that end, I think he does it so incredibly well. So yeah, that's why that's my number 4. Incredible lead performance, really fascinating central relationship, and it has those supporting characters in there too that I think make this cool, where it's not just 2 central characters that are cool, it's 2 central characters, and then, you know, you also have the mother character, and you have characters showing up here and there that are just really funny and really strange. And there's that, like you said, that dark humor to it that I think comes out from a lot of those supporting characters. If there wasn't, you know, that mother character in here, would this movie be so funny? And I don't know if it would be, but yeah, a gorgeous movie, a beautiful relationship. And yeah, that's why it's at my number 4. Honestly, at one point it was my number 1. So I've moved it down quite a lot in these last couple of rewatches. It's not because this was worse. It was only because other movies that I watched were like so much better than I remember them being. But yeah, it's at number 4 and it's still a 10 out of 10, you know? So I'm ranking 10 out of 10s at this point, but yeah, I really, really love Phantom Thread.
Yeah, it's just every single one. It's almost kind of a little boring because it's just they're all 10 out of 10s here, and it's just.
And you're sitting here trying to be like, okay, like what is wrong with this movie in sense of like, how can I rank this lower than something else, right? And then you're almost starting to like nitpick a movie that's like a 10, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna put the list. Like here they are. Yeah. So I bet if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably change some of these around.
That's the thing. I'm not confident at all on my list. Like you ask me tomorrow, it might just be completely different. Like I said, I literally switched it while we were filming tonight on something. So, so it's like, so anything could happen at any moment. But my number 4 was one that you mentioned earlier, which was Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights is my number 4 because this was one that I probably initially would have had lower until my most recent rewatch. Because while I loved the soundtrack, I'm always going to be like a 70s and 80s kid at heart. Like I just love that vibe and everything. And just all these characters are great. The ensemble's great here. Burt Reynolds was excellent. This is the best performance of his career easily. And while we didn't get Leonardo DiCaprio in this movie, I am kind of almost happy about that because Mark Wahlberg needed, like, he's not a great actor, but like this is easily his best performance, and he needed something like this in his filmography. And the reason why this movie really struck a chord with me is not only is it such a great hangout movie and with just a found family message that's really moving, but it's also extremely dark because this movie starts off with the fun, drug fueled kind of craziness of the 70s. Everyone like, hey, feel the love, man, have fun, this was excellent, woohoo. And then the 80s come, and that's when all the regret sits in. That's when all the like, where am I going with my life sits in.
The reality check.
And the reality check, and it's really takes a completely different turn. And that is just what I love about Paul Thomas Anderson, is how he's able to just flip things like that and make a whole nother kind of tonal shift, and it works really well. Like the ending speech that Mark Wahlberg gives is just tells you everything, where it's like, I want to be a star, I need to be a star. That's just, it's so beautiful and really amazing. And so yeah, I didn't think that this was going to be one of his most profound movies. When you're talking about a movie that is just a hangout movie about a bunch of people in the porn industry, but this really is. And it's one of the most honest portrayals of this industry, and maybe the best movie that we have about the porn industry today. And so I really have a lot of respect for this movie, and I just absolutely could just rewatch it over and over again, because that's another thing. It's very rewatchable. It has that kind of factor to it where you're never bored by it. You just it has such a energetic, fun pace to it. And let's not forget the Alfred Molina scene. When Alfred Molina shows up, he just absolutely steals the entire movie. Like, this is like you are both laughing, but you're also scared, you're horrified, you have all these different mix of emotions there, and it's just really some fascinating stuff there. And you had Julianne Moore, her like wanting to connect with her son again, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman being kind of like the gay person in the group and having that kind of insecurity about himself. It's really, really fascinating stuff here. So Boogie Nights still holds the test of time. I'm also biased too, because it came out my birth year, 1997. So I'm always going to have a special place in my heart for it because of that. So yeah, absolutely love it. And yeah, I think it's Mark Wahlberg, now that he's like a Catholic or whatever, who says that that he regrets doing Boogie Nights. But yeah,
I think he stepped back on that recently, but I'm not totally sure.
Yeah,
he has said that for sure.
Yeah, I know he has said that before, but I just don't know how recent it was. So yeah, that's my number 4. So now on to number 3. We are in the top 3, guys.
Oh,
we are getting down to the nitty-gritty. This is just getting harder and harder as it goes. So.
My number 3 is one we talked about to death the last few days. It's the most recent release, one battle after another. I'm not going to go into super deep detail about this. If you want to hear my thoughts, there's a spoiler-free review I did initially out of the theater, and then there was also our spoiler breakdown we did. Where we went very detailed through this movie, what we thought about it thematically and the craft and all of that stuff. So if you want to see my thoughts, go over there. But in brief, the craft of this is absolutely shocking, man. And you talk about like a bold, confident movie. This is such a bold turn from him, from Licorice Pizza, such a small, quiet relationship drama, to this. It feels like a totally different filmmaker, but yet there are still those through lines that make it PTA, right? I think that's what makes this such a standout for me, is that it's very, very PTA. He's not leaning back on his idols in the same way he does in his other earlier films. He's not just like in your face doing Scorsese, or in your face doing Tarantino, or in your face doing like a Jim Jarmusch or whatever. He's doing PTA through and through, and all of that stuff about the found family is all in here. All the stuff about those odd outcast characters, it's all in here. So yeah, for me, it's number 3. I would love to have it get to number 1 at some point. Maybe it will, but yeah, it's sitting down there really strongly at number 3.
Yeah, just like how I was saying, Boogie Nights was super rewatchable. Number 3 is also one battle after another for me. I'm not going to go super in depth, but this is also very rewatchable. I've already seen it twice. I plan to go back and see it again and again and again. This is a film that just I could just keep on seeing time and time again and never get bored of. The action is top tier. This is not only a movie about found family, but it's also a very anxiety-inducing movie about just the anxieties of living in America and just what that is like. All the characters are so just fun and stand out, like Benicio del Toro, Regina Hall, Leonardo DiCaprio. Everyone's gonna be mimicking that Halloween costume and everything. And yeah, to me, this lived up to the hype because I was worried it was going to be completely underwhelming because people were like, David Elric was saying this is the best movie I've been best wide release movie I've reviewed since I've been working as a film critic and all that. And I was like, holy shit. And all these other reviews coming out, I was like, oh God, you read stuff like this. That happens a lot where if you see a horror movie, it's like scariest horror movie of all time or scariest horror movie in decades or whatever. You're like, I mean, it was a little creepy, sure, but like it wasn't like that scary. Stuff like that. I was worried that I was going to get something like this. And I did not. I was blown away. It lived up completely to the hype. While this isn't like 21st century level, it's one of the best movies of the 21st century for sure. But this might be the best and most defining movie of our decade because this kind of defines what it's like to be a citizen in America. And this is interesting because this was like his passion project. He was working 20 years on this movie, and it finally came into fruition. And he was able to get Leo finally, and it all came together, and it made this beautiful bow of a movie, in my opinion. So, yeah, didn't go into it long. Guys, go check out our spoiler review and the non-spoiler review Tristan did if you guys have not seen them. They were really good. So make sure you check those out. Now on to number 2.
Number 2 for me, give me just half a second here.
You're all good.
We've been talking for a while. I had to get some water in me for a minute there. Right. My number 2 is his other Pynchon adaptation. Probably my spiciest take. My number 2 ranking is Inherent Vice. This is such a total blast of a movie. Like a run through this decade of change and then regression and then ultimately stagnation. And I think it's one of Joaquin Phoenix's best roles. And we talked about how maybe from like a analytical craft perspective, you can say, oh, The Master, it's his best performance. He's so incredible in that. But I would watch his performance in this like every day because it's just so much fun. He's such a bizarre character to spend time with. And similar to character in One Bath or Another, he's just like this stoned out hippie who's just trying to save someone he cares about. And he gets caught up in this completely absurd narrative. And I think the fact that these storylines just seem to be going all over the place adds a lot to this movie. It feels like it reflects that era of like total where like hippies and leftists and all these various progressive groups are all over the place, but there's no sense of unity. Everybody wants change, but nobody really agrees on what change means, you know. And there's this character that he's after, and he talks about how like she was there for a moment and then she was gone, and drugs can't fill the void, nothing else can fill the void. All I want back is her, right? And I feel like that character eventually does, you know, come to represent maybe meaning in your life, maybe, you know, the actual meaning of progress. You feel for just a moment that you're actually making change, you're actually doing something with your life, you're actually going to, you know, make the world a better place. And then that only lasts for like this fleeting little second. And then by the time she comes back and he sees her again, it's just not the same, you know. And she's not real. She's a memory. She's like a figment of his imagination of what I could have been, this life that I had that is gone. And when he comes to see her again, he starts to realize maybe I didn't even have that life to begin with. And I just think this is such a blast of a movie. And Josh Brolin's character as this beautiful foil to Joaquin Phoenix's character. You get in Josh Brolin's past, he was like this almost like hippie guy who was like selling stuff on TV. And he had like, I don't remember the guy's name, but he had some like hippie catchphrase name. And then he eventually, you know, sold out and became a cop and becomes obsessed with shutting down Joaquin Phoenix's life. And you get the sense that in a different life, these two guys could have been best friends. In a different world, you know, Josh Brolin's character longs to be like Joaquin Phoenix's character, and you get that sense by the end. He doesn't want to be living this square life by the law with no one who knows him or cares about him. He wants to live that free life that Joaquin Phoenix has, and to some sense, Joaquin Phoenix longs for the rigid stability of Josh Brolin's life. He wants just to be left alone and have something he can, rely upon. So it's very fascinating. Both these two characters are, opposites of each other, two sides of the same coin. And they also run into a lot of really compelling supporting cast. It's something that I think I really cherish in PTA movies, is having a really compelling, like, characters that show up that are really fun to spend time with. And I love Inherent Vice. I can't wait to go watch this thing again. And like I said, it feels like that representation of a decade where everybody was saying, we're going to make progress, we're going to make change, everything's going to be better, right? And then it ends up, everybody goes and then they vote for Reagan and they vote for Nixon, and then eventually they're voting for Bush and they're voting for Trump, and all of these people who were saying we're going to be the force for change, we're going to make everything better, right? They eventually just became kind of lazy and kind of self-interested, and then all of its progressive movements of the era fell to be nothing, right? And it made me think about like Easy Rider and other movies that are about this similar time, where we were all willing and ready to make progress and make change, and then we just didn't, right? And why did that happen? And this movie tries to examine why that might have happened. And it's almost like a more fun to watch version of One Battle After Another, where One Battle After Another is so intense and so dire, and you walk out of it feeling like you just want to like curl up or something like that. When this movie feels like the fun version of that. It still has a lot of moments of sorrow, a lot of moments of longing, and people looking at their lives wishing they had something else, some different choice, some different path. That's something that PTA seems to resonate quite a lot with. But I love this thing, and I'm happy it's at number 2. I was so close to putting this thing at number 1, but I just couldn't justify putting it above my number 1 choice. You can figure out what it is if you're paying attention. But yeah, this is such a great movie, and I can't believe people are so harsh on this thing, man. In the last couple of days, people have been doing rankings of PTA, and this is always towards the bottom. People are saying, oh, this is the one that I don't like. This is the one that I hate. And to me, this is so close to being my favorite one. And I would watch this thing more than maybe any of these other ones on here again. So I really had a blast with this thing. And it's not just fun. There's also a lot beneath the surface that I think people don't necessarily get on the first or second time watching it.
Oh, yeah. For sure. And it's definitely not that bad, guys. Get a hold of yourselves. My number 2 is actually the same. I'm going to give a shout out to a YouTuber if you ever watches this video. Him and I have talked a few times, but I'm going to give a shout out to Karsten Runquist. My number 2 is the same number 2 as him. I'm glad because I went through like his ranking again, and I was just like, oh, we share the same love for this movie. It is the first almost said Wes Anderson. First Paul Thomas Anderson that I have seen, which is Punch Drunk Love. This movie really just blew me away. And the first time I watched it, I thought it was really good. And there was even a time when it was my favorite PTA film of all time, my number 1. And it just absolutely was phenomenal. I have a love inside me stronger than you'll ever know. And that love is this movie. And that love is also Barry Egan. I think every single one of us has a Barry Egan inside of us. We are all longing for love. We are all searching for that feeling to be seen. And it makes this character so endearing. It's probably one of, if not the most endearing characters that PTA has ever written. And I think that Adam Sandler just showed himself to be not just, hey, look at me, I'm the funny guy. He showed himself to be something really true and real and honest here as an actor. And I really can connect with this character and connect with the relationship and the chemistry that they have with one another. And I also want to say that this is maybe his most visually stunning movie to date. The blues and how they bounce off with the purples and the way his tie is red and how it all just goes together and it all adds to thematic stuff. There's weird things in there where there's like a car crash that happens at one point that just all of a sudden it just out of nowhere just rolls out in the street and you're just like, whoa, what the fuck? Why did that happen? And part of the reason why is because it's trying to show us what it's like, what his life is like now that he's found this, that now that this love is in his life, that it's going to be almost like a train wreck. That's how love is. It's just, it will roll, it will crash, it will have all these different emotions there. When they kiss in the hotel room, if you notice watching it, she's pushing him into the light, and then he's pushing her into the dark. Barry Egan has a darkness in him that is definitely seen, that we see in there, and now she's going to have to be encapsulated with that darkness, even if she loves him, while he has just wanted to have a light on him. He just has been wanting to be seen this whole time, and now he can finally be seen as she pushes him to the light while they're kissing with each other. And there's so visual details like that just are absolutely mind-boggling. There's stuff with the piano in there that sure seems random, but once you actually break it down on the surface, it's way more deeper than just a piano being in the middle of the street. Like it's all just ties in really well together. The music from Johnny Greenwood's very kinetic, very sporadic, and it adds a lot of layers of tension, adds to the romance, adds to all sorts of different elements in this movie. And I want to add real quick that Philip Seymour Hoffman, talk about a scene stealer. I always will quote constantly how about you just shut the fuck up? And the way that he just quote, like the way he acts in this movie, like, oh, did you just say go fuck myself? I think he's so good in this, and absolutely steals both scenes he's in. And you see Barry Egan starts off kind of shy, insecure. He's hanging out with his sisters. He's doing all this, and they're just like, giving him shit, and he will get angry at times. But all that anger that he has, like when he's banging up bathrooms, when he's punching, stuff like that, all of that anger is all just stuff he can't express. He doesn't know how to really stand up for himself and to be confident. And then in that final moment, that final showdown, which is great with Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's finally there. He's confident, and he has that great line of, I have a love inside of me, stronger than you'll ever know. And it's so good. And finally now he has risen up to become kind of the man that he wants to be. And I think it's really beautiful. I think it's just so fascinating. And it was also refreshing seeing a director like Paul Thomas Anderson do now a 90-minute movie coming off of a huge 3-hour exhaustive kind of epic, So I think that this is just one of the best movies that he's ever done. And like you were talking about, very underrated. This movie just doesn't get enough love, and I think it should, because this, to me, is this and my number one are the two times I most personally connected to a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. So that is number two. Now we have done it. We are reaching the crown jewel, the number one, the best PTA movie according to us. So
if you've been following along, you can definitely figure out where I'm going to be at here. But sometimes your most acclaimed movie is your most acclaimed movie because it's the best one. And it turned out to be, for me, There Will Be Blood, which is probably his most acclaimed film, I would say. Maybe One Battle After Another will outshine it come Oscar time, but There Will Be Blood is such a jaw-dropping step up from, in terms of craft, from Punch Drunk Love. Like, that was such a simple and smaller film, similar to going from Licorice Pizza to One Battle After Another, and you're like, what the hell is this? And then, like, when this movie came out, it was like a shattering moment. Like, everyone was talking about this thing, and everyone was like, you got to check this movie out. And this, for me, was among the first movies that really hooked me into being like a film fan and seeing movies beyond like just, Spider-Man and X-Men and like not to knock those movies, but like when you're trying to butt into being a cinephile at like 14, or whatever, and you're trying to watch stuff outside of your comfort zone, and then all of a sudden There Will Be Blood drops on me, and it just like shatters my perception of what these movies can be about. And going back and watching it now, there's even more than I got out of it for the first time, right? The first time I watched it, I'm just like, oh, this acting is crazy. This guy is so wild. And knowing myself teenager, I was probably like, this guy's awesome. I want to be like this guy. But I totally missed the point, I think, when I was a teenager. But I look at it back now, and it's almost like the most depressing origin story to the United States that could possibly exist. Talk about like, oh, it feels bad that the bad guy wins, but as a history piece of the origin of America and the origin of capitalism, the bad guy did win, right? You look at the world now. Look at what we did to this earth, what we did to this planet, this country that was once large open plains of nature. By the end of this movie, are just being completely destroyed for the gains of capital and for the gains of religion, right? And you have organized religion and capitalism is like these dueling forces of evil just trying to maintain control of this new world in this film. And there's all these jaw-dropping wides of what were once, desert plains that are now being torn apart by oil rigs and torn apart by churches. And both of these men, in the end, like, he doesn't really care about making money by the end of this movie. And same way Paul Dano's character doesn't really care about like spreading the faith. By the end, they're just like giant egos trying to battle and get more. It's just like trying to grab more stuff. And when you look at it as a metaphor for capitalism, a metaphor for like, corporations just trying to get more land, trying to get more money, trying to destroy the competition, not just, have healthy competition in the marketplace, but eat their competitors alive, right? Like when you look at these CEOs and Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezoses of the world, like this is what these people are like, right? Like when you filter out all of the PR and the Instagram posts and the stuff, like they're just totally heartless and greedy people who have sold their souls to the devil of capitalism. And like this character who's left at the end of this film, Daniel Plainview, is not even a human anymore. What he could have been, who he could have been, is totally gone. He sold that decades ago to make an easy buck, right? And that's just such a tragic ending to this character. And yeah, when you look at it as a statement about what brought us to where we're at, it's just a harrowing, like really hard to sit through movie, because you just see it and you think about how right this was. And you look at the consolidation of studios in the Hollywood marketplace, and you look at the consolidation of all kinds of corporations outside of Hollywood. It's not good for the industry. It's not good for the world. It's literally destroying the planet. Like it's literally ending life on Earth, but we just keep letting it happen. It's almost like this unstoppable force that we unleashed all these decades ago, and now it's just controlling everything. And it's just a harrowing and hard sit, but it is very, very, I think, poignant and important. It becomes more and more important as the years go by. And I really believe you should watch this one again. If it's something that you look back on and you're like, oh, it was great, I thought it was amazing, watch it now in the context of where we're at in the world, and it will be a lot more interesting even than it was before.
Yeah, because this was one I was not able to get to before One Battle After Another. I've seen it before. I loved it. I thought it was great technically, but and I thought all the performances were great. It was just at the time, it was like the character. It just felt like, the whole reason you don't want to watch Succession is because it's just like a bunch of absolute like douchebags being like douchebags for like an entire 4 seasons of a television show. And that's just sort of like this, but but now I see the capitalistic message on here, that does make a lot of sense. And I saw something where someone was talking about There Will Be Blood is about the film industry and all that, and because of how studios will interfere and how they will completely just take someone's idea and then just obliterate it for profit and everything. So yeah, that is a really great look at it now. And so I definitely got to go back and check it out again. But again, still a 10 out of 10 movie. All the ones that we talked about, for the most part, are like 10 out of 10 movies. My number one, if you've been paying attention, this was one that was about where you had it ranked the last time. And then on this most recent rewatch, I was utterly blown away by Magnolia. I think that this is maybe his most profound movie to date and his most human movie to date. This is a grand epic that feels like a director's last movie, but it's only his third movie, which is insane. This feels like something you make it like the end of your career, that this is what you go out on. And he only did this for his third film, even though it's like his magnum opus, basically. And it's it's crazy to me. That's astounding. It just goes to show how good of a director he is. And so many movies now have been like kind of copying this. There was like some movie that came out not too long ago where I forget the name of the movie, but they straight up dressed up exactly like Tom Cruise in Magnolia. And I'm like, oh my God, they're copying Magnolia's Tom Cruise look. And then Weapons, which just came out this year, basically was Magnolia in structure and its style, what it was, how the story was told, everything. It basically was taken from Magnolia. Still a great film, but this is now one of those that, much like other PTA films like Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood, is starting to kind of be recycled now from other filmmakers, which is really great to see. All the ensemble here is incredible, especially Tom Cruise, which he was nominated for this movie and for very good reason. His scene on his dad's deathbed is just absolutely heartbreaking. But mostly what it says about the past, and if we can overcome the past and our traumas and fight that trauma that we had to deal with in the past, and also bringing up ideas of stuff that like people who did very vile, awful things, and say like, can we be forgiven for that? Mm-hmm. Does the past define who we are, or can we just be a different human? And I just think that what it has to say about humanity as a whole is something that not only stuck with me on a personal note, but also something that I feel like we all need to kind of hear right now, because we're all kind of living in this environment of, we don't know where we want to go in life. We look at our past failures, our and we think, oh, is this going to lead into a future failure? But we can't be thinking like that right now. We just have to think in the moment and be the best human beings that we can be, so that we can make this country thrive and be the best country that it can be as well. So yeah, it's just really, really a beautiful movie, guys. Magnolia, in my opinion, is PTA's masterpiece. And if y'all have not seen it, definitely go check it out. And that ending, one of the greatest film endings of all time. Absolutely exceptional. And the music in here has probably the best use of like, one is the loneliest number. This film is truly like poetry. Like, this is a poet sharing their poetry to you, and you just have to sit back and listen for 3 hours, and it's exhausting, but that's the point. It is overwhelming, but that's the point. I agree. I would not cut out anything from this movie. This is 3 hours, and I know you said you wanted to cut it back, but I would not cut it back at all. I love director, like, it's funny because like my favorite Kubrick film is Barry Lyndon, and he said the same thing about Barry Lyndon, where he's like, I would cut back some of that. That doesn't need to be 3 hours. It's probably my worst film, stuff like that. But this is just, to me, perfection, as close to perfection as you can be. So yeah, Magnolia is my number one. I thought you said mandolin. Yeah, I definitely noticed it. But yeah, Magnolia is great. And this whole, again, his whole filmography, what a filmmaker. What a filmmaker. This is just...
It's unbelievable. Like, as you were talking about this, I was already like, should I just move, master up a little bit? Like as we were going through it, yeah. I was like, maybe I'm going to change my mind by the time we finish recording, So if I ever do another ranking in my own or something like that, or like if he does another movie coming out in a few years, we do a ranking again, I wouldn't be surprised if we changed a lot of this up again, So it'll be fun to come back and look at this video again and just revisit this ranking again. I'd love to see in the comments what you guys have as your ranking, because as I was doing research for this, I was looking up other YouTubers and looking up other critics and all their various rankings, and it was very rare that you found someone that had the same ranking as anybody else, right? It was always versatile, and there's arguments for essentially any of these to be your number one. Like, it'd be a hard argument to put like Hard 8 as your number one PTA, but somebody might have the argument for it.
I've never seen it yet, but I'm sure someone does. I mean, people have Inherent Vice. I've seen people have Licorice Pizza as their number one. So, it's just that's the thing when I was doing research and going through all the different rankings. It's so versatile. Like people have The Master at their number one. There's people who have like Boogie Nights in their number one. There's people who have There Will Be Blood. It just goes back and forth. So, and EDM says 5 is The Master, 4 Inherent Vice, 3 Phantom Thread, 2 One Battle After Another, and then number 1 is There Will Be Blood, my pick for greatest film of all time. So,
wow,
that is and that's an exceptional top 5. And that's another thing with PTA as well is all the rankings that you see on here. It's like if anyone was to show you their top 10 list, there's no way that you can physically look at it and say, "Oh, that's not a good list. That's bad." It's literally impossible. Because you just look at any ranking and you're like, yep, that tracks. I can understand why you think that way. I can understand why that is in that order and all that. It's just So again, I really enjoyed doing this ranking with you. Very anxiety inducing of a ranking, which is fitting because this is a very anxiety inducing kind of director.
I feel like if we're ever going to get hate comments, it might be on this video. The PTA fanboys tend to take the rankings pretty seriously, I don't know if I want to see any Boogie Nights fanboys coming at me or something in the comments.
Yeah, I don't want to see any There Will Be Blood fanboys. They're going to cause me some – there actually is going to be some blood coming here in a second. I'm so actually surprised that we didn't lose any people while we were saying some controversial – takes and such on the stream tonight. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in tonight who watched along with us. We loved having you guys, and make sure that you comment down below what your ranking of Paul Thomas Anderson is. We would love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, share, ring that notification bell so that you never miss another stream. We will be back to be doing an awards roundtable episode dedicated to One Battle After Another. So we're going to be basically just talking everything about One Battle After Another, where we think it could fit into, what categories it could go into. So stay tuned for that, guys. It's going to be great. We also got this week Peacemaker that Tristan is wrapping up or soon. He's got this one, and then you got 2 more episodes, right?
Yeah, 2 more left. The next one is on Thursday, and then the final one is the week after that. We're finally wrapping things up. James Gunn's hyped these up as like movie level crazy, the best thing he's ever worked on. We'll see if that lives up to the hype. We're going to talk about that, I think, Thursday night. So if you watch Peacemaker live, we start the after show essentially as soon as it ends. So we get the cameras rolling, we sit down here and we talk about it. So you get our initial thoughts, our initial reactions. Sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're just getting emotional, but that's kind of the fun of the after show, right? You're just getting our thoughts right as it happens. So come on and check it out Thursday night if you're a Peacemaker fan.
And then also on Wednesday night, for all of you fans who are fans of the new show, they have a news show that they do where they break down everything in the world of news and such, and that's happening on Wednesday night, tomorrow night.
Crazy lineup of news this week. It's like it never, ever stopped. As soon as we had an idea for what our headliner was going to be, they're all of a sudden talking about AI actresses, and who knows what will going to happen in the next 24 hours. So if you want to get a very extended breakdown of all the week of movie news, we're doing that tomorrow night.
Yep. So go check out Here's the News. Check out the Peacemaker After Show. Check out Awards Roundtable and so much more, guys. We will see you all in the next one. Until then, stay classy, my friends, and keep on watching those movies.